Fantastic. Okay, welcome everyone for another magical Market Monday with the PYRESWAP show, and I appreciate you guys literally from the bottom of my heart. I have decided to be more tactical, and I think I'm going to address the when we do these streams, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, instead of me talking about the project second and then the theme of the day first, I will talk about the project first, get a whole bunch of that like out of the way, especially on Market Monday when we go 3 days without streaming, which I know since we actually skipped Thursday, it's 4 days without streaming. We'll talk about the project first and then go into the more cooler educational stuff. And thank you so much for this color hue today. Look at that, guys. I'm in the fucking pink blazer, and we have this fucking pink hue. And yeah, arguably, I love it. I love it. I fucking love it. Again, guys, extremely bullish news. This is now, I think, the 5th PYRESWAP show in a row where I have successfully taken pre-workout 30 minutes prior. So I want you guys to know that we're gonna have a creatine reinforced and hyper caffeinated Market Monday for PYRESWAP show. I hope you guys didn't pay full price for those seats, because for the next hour, you're only gonna need the edge of them. Am I clear? Okay. Okay. A mentor of mine on the submarine used to say that, and I thought it was so fucking funny. And now that I have this title of being a ringmaster, I realize, you know, it's funny, there's this poetry about the name Seigniorage Circus. Because when I go into the full economic side, I'm all in the seigniorage. But there's also an aspect of this organization which is the circus, which is being the showman. And that is the skill to level up right now for me. Does that make sense? And yes, and I mean that like it's a diuretic. Is that what you mean, Dr. Mac? The diuretic effects of caffeine. Well, I'll be all right. Yeah, thankfully I wake up at 2 a.m. So I took care of problems like that before you guys had to worry about them. Does that make sense? But yeah, I will say that I think the first day I took pre-workout, I was in fact surprised at how much it affected me. Anyways, let's talk about PYRESWAP, okay? Because there is some cool stuff to talk about for Market Monday, but let's talk about PYRESWAP first. Okay, the biggest news is that a new teammate has arrived at the PYRESWAP house. They arrived on Saturday, you guys, okay? So we have a whole nother person living here and scaling up our operations. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand that? So if you want to think about output, legitimately we have a new multiplier, somebody who basically will work full-time on this like me. Does that make sense? And this particular person is somebody who I guess I was a mentor to many years ago and probably still am. And he's definitely kind of like a workaholic because I kind of trained him to be. Does that make sense? So legitimately, I should be able to duplicate my output. And he is not as crypto literate, but he is very, very smart. And he is capable of learning economics and stuff like that. So have you guys ever seen that movie Fight Club with Edward Gordon and Brad Pitt? Have you guys ever seen Fight Club? Have you guys ever seen it? Unless you've never seen Fight Club? Okay, well, what I'm about to tell you next is not going to make sense unless you've seen Fight Club. So has anybody in the audience today seen Fight Club? Here, let me check my chat. Let me see if anybody on any other platform has seen Fight Club. Okay, Dr. Mac has seen it. Yeah, Rolf, correct. Well, anyways, the joke that I was about to make is that I'm having this guy wait in front of the front door for 3 days while we yell at him. Yeah, anyways, that's not actually true, but I also expected that more people knew the movie Fight Club. Yeah, it's truly Polignac book, exactly. Also, one of the few times I think in history when the author of a book said that the movie was better than the book he wrote. So yeah, Fight Club is just a great movie all around. And in fact, the author of the book that it's based off of said the movie was better than the book. Anyways, if you guys don't know enough about the movie, it's not funny for me to say that Pyre Producer has to go yell at him in an hour and tell him he has to leave, you know, for another 2 more days until we bring him into the basement. Anyways, the point being is that Electronic, first of all, we'll definitely be leveraging the amount of content output. So first of all, content output is increasing, and that is in fact super important because that's what I'm going to get to next. Okay, First of all, last week we talked about the demography of Web3. We'll get back to that when we get into Market Monday. But let's talk about PYRESWAP and what we have going on here, okay? So first of all, I'm going to make the marketing plan simplistic for you guys to understand. Does that make sense? I want everyone to be clear about what's going on, okay? So like, it's not a long process. It's got 3 steps. Marketing right now. Content engine. Does that make sense? By the way, we have Alessio, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. Anyways, for those of you who know, we actually have TikToks and Instagrams and Facebook Reels and short forms being made. As of right now, we're getting about maybe 500 eyeballs a day. Does this actually converting in some meaningful way to buy pressure on the price charts? I have no fucking idea. But what I do know is that we're getting 500 a day that we were getting 0 for weeks. Does that make sense? 0 for months. Arguably, the content engine launched about 9 weeks later than I wanted it to. Does that make sense? But the good news is now that it's out of the garage, it is in fact growing exponentially, because the person who is now living in my other guest bedroom, he is going to be effectively like full-time on content engine. He'll probably be running multiple brands of repurposing content, talking about me, things like that. So like we are just going to, this new person who I will introduce later to you guys, he might even come on camera. He will be like 3xing, 4xing, or 5xing like the amount of content being created. Now when it comes to short form content, you just have to be consistent and keep producing it. Because some days it'll be like you only got 500 views. But then all of a sudden, because you stayed consistent, the algorithm of social media will favor you and suddenly you'll get 10,000 views. Does that make sense? Suddenly you'll get 100,000 views. Suddenly you'll get 1 million views. Does that make sense? And the only way to effectively like win at this is to keep rolling the dice. So we are going to maximize this by having multiple accounts, whether they're PYRESWAP official or whether they are Seni Rich Circus official or whether they are Fide fanboy clone accounts or whether they are random accounts like economics quizzes. Does that make sense? All these accounts will end up being awareness generators for PYRESWAP. And I know that it's not really clear why I'm focusing on it right now, but having things always happening when it comes to awareness generation is key to actually growing. Does that make sense? And it's just meant to be a single small layer that we build on top of. So the content engine, by the way, finally happening. For those of you who don't know, it's happening and we get 500-ish views, not like an explosive number. But again, today could be the day that we get 10,000. Tomorrow could be the day we get 100,000. You just don't know. You just have to keep rolling and iterating and improving, right? Again, it's about 9 weeks behind. But to be clear, we've been delayed so much worse. So like, I want you to understand it's still a victory that we got at this point. Not only is it, okay, it's behind, but we're now going to scale it exponentially, meaning we're going to have more content engines in parallel, right? We've been doing the PYRESWAP show, live streaming now, on average, 4 to 6 hours a week for the last 5 months. Would you guys agree? Thank you, Haas. I appreciate that. The second thing in our marketing plan, besides the content engine, does that make sense? And again, the short forms also help the Twitter. Does that make sense? Because the Twitter accounts can now tweet short forms as they get pumped out by our engines. Make sense? So like these content gets repurposed everywhere. The second thing, Twitter ambassadors. Okay? Now, for those of you who don't know, I have been working on a website. It's actually a copy page. And for those of you who don't know the name of the page, there's 3 of them. There's 3 sites. It's called How to Tell When to Sell. And I think that a lot of people misinterpreted why I got so bullish about this idea or why I even started focusing on this as it being so critically important. Those of you who have been with us since 2022, you remember that Discord used to be the dominating platform in crypto. And then somehow Twitter became the dominating platform. What I learned recently is that this is not some mysterious phenomenon. What it means is that there was enough projects funneling eyeballs away from Discord to Twitter and then reinforcing a habit of going to Twitter. Believe it or not, this process is completely reversible. Projects are capable of funneling people from Twitter over into Discord. This project will be one of them. Does that make sense? Now, I want to actually bring up a quote here on screen share, which I'll get here in a second. Let's do Let's see what happens here. Okay. Let me expand this and open image a new tab. Okay. You guys can read this. Always enter the conversation already taking place in the customer's mind. Right now, electronic, I have no idea. Yeah, but when to sell indeed? When to sell indeed? Okay. First of all, can you guys see my screen? And thank you to whoever is commenting on Kick with apparently a copy pasta. Okay. Well, electronic, that is I think you and I use the word trend differently, and maybe that's more of a fad. But yes, again, the point of instead even thinking about jumping in front of a fad, let's go back to this Robert Collier quote. Always enter the conversation already taking place in the customer's mind. So, when we have been in the past talking about our features or even talking about our benefits, if that makes sense, a lot of the benefits that PYRESWAP has, they do not directly target a pain point. They do not directly target a problem that the user base already has. Does that make sense? So when we talk about things like we give you the powers of central banks so they can't own you. Does that make sense? Now, being owned by a central bank is painful to some people, but it's not nearly as, I guess you could say, short-term gripping as another problem, which is knowing when to sell. Does that make sense? So all of our benefit statements, while they are in fact features rewritten as benefits, if we were to enter the conversation taking place in our customer's mind, let me ask you guys this. Who here, before they learned about active staking, was thinking, if only staking was less passive? Was anybody thinking like, damn, I just hate staking and how passive it is? Right? Nobody had that idea. Correct? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Because, yeah, and that's fine. Because it's like inventing chocolate ice cream in a world that only knows vanilla. Does that make sense? It's like, hey, we all liked vanilla. We hadn't considered chocolate. Does that make sense? Right, exactly, Fixer, exactly. So the point being was, it wasn't like, hey, how do we make staking less passive? It wasn't a pain point. While I think it is very, by the way, I'm very, very proud of active staking, and I love it like it's my child, to be clear. I love it like it's my child, right? But the fact of the matter is that it's not necessarily a compelling argument to actually learn about PYRESWAP. Does that make sense? Like learning that we have a new exciting crypto widget is not compelling enough. Does that make sense? Most people are compelled to learn about stuff from FOMO, right? Like the crowd beats them there. Does that make sense? So some people aren't going to be compelled until they see enough of a crowd. Does that make sense? That's kind of weird, but it is what it is. But what conversation is always entering people's minds? When do I know when to sell XRP? When do I know when to sell Bitcoin? When would I sell this NFT? When would I sell this meme coin? They're always wanting to know when to sell. Does that make sense? They're always asking that question. As long as people hold crypto, they're likely thinking about some kind of exit event. Does that make sense? Because if people fantasize about being pre-rich, or if people fantasize about being rich in the future, somehow their portfolio, their crypto portfolio, got translated into, I guess, buying a Lamborghini, right? The when Lambo meme is ubiquitous, right? So in order for your bag to become a Lamborghini, somehow a sale has to take place. Would you guys agree? Right? The when Lambos, right? Right? Like, unless you figure out a way to borrow against your crypto portfolio to finance a Lambo, right? You still have to sell. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Okay. Anyways, so our Twitter ambassadors right now, first of all, I want to applaud them for their consistency. And I also mean just you guys, because I see you guys retweeting us and tweeting about us on Twitter. Again, like I cannot even count the amount of people that I appreciate your consistent support on Twitter. Like a lot of you guys. I'm not even going to name you guys. Later on, maybe we will create this, through Zeely, or we'll have a way to rank it, because there are those platforms that now monitor Twitter activity. But again, yeah, I know a lot of you guys already do this. The fact of the matter is that this new toolkit, which is how to tell when to sell.com or .info or .xyz, it allows you guys to literally almost subversively enter the conversation taking place in everybody's mind. Does that make sense? Because if the only time you can mention PYRESWAP is when some type of like influencer is like, show me the next 100x, and it's just like, you know, there's 19 different projects just like shouting out a coin name, and then we're just one of those 19 projects. We don't differentiate ourselves. Does that make sense? It is not a differentiated. But it doesn't differentiate us at all to just be encapsulated in a tweet. Does that make sense? Arguably, PYRESWAP is not a good project to describe on Twitter. Do you guys get what I'm saying? But the benefit of PYRESWAP, which is again how to tell when to sell, that can be communicated on Twitter. Does that make sense? So we do, in fact, I'm still writing this thing. In fact, I'm trying to shorten one of the sections. I'm still trying to shorten one of these sections to, by the way, we just got DNS propagation going yesterday or something like that. So we do have these websites getting built. Indeed, CJ, yes. But the benefit that can apply to the John Everyman of crypto is actually having a clear indication of when you would want to sell around. Does that make sense? Even if that range is between 0.70 and like 1.01, right? That's like a large range. That's still way more than any other crypto offer, like crypto project provides. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? Like having that fundamental analysis there is still way more than any other meme coin or even Bitcoin or XRP. Exactly, electronic. So the fact of the matter is electronic. And do you know why they're tired of cats and dogs? Because they don't know when to sell. Does that make sense? It's like, it's just so hard to predict the future that they get exhausted by it. So the point of it is, our Twitter ambassador program, and by the way, this implies to you guys too who promote us on Twitter. I am working right now on getting this finished like today. We don't even need to talk about XRP right now. It's because XRP went to the top 3 or whatever. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about XRP. All right, so staying on topic here. Enter the conversation already taking place in the customer's mind. If I could get a screen share again, Mr. Producer, just to reiterate this fucking quote. So again, when we talk about active staking, or we talk about metertrage, or we even talk about tomb forks, this is not like the conversation taking place in the user's mind concerning these things. It's not a thing, but they're always thinking about how to sell or when to sell. Does that make sense? Because every single one of them, if they're already in crypto, they have that problem. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Yeah. Make sense? So, in order, okay, content engine, this already is like happening. This is beginning. Does that make sense? Started. And now, through consistency and scaling, it will get more effective. The Twitter ambassador program, I am also going to systemize this to the point where it can now scale without me. But what it's waiting on is this final component, which is again, the funnel page. Does that make sense? Like waiting. This is pending still, yeah. Okay. Right, we'll just say this is fucking waiting on me. Because I want you guys to understand that most of the time when anybody is promoting stuff on Twitter, I would say over half the time, they are just parroting me. Does that make sense to you guys? And I want you to know, parroting is not necessarily convincing because you can't talk or answer questions about it. Does that make sense? So the point of it is that part of the work of this is figuring out how to like reduce this down to something that anybody can talk about. Does that make sense? So if you want to just literally address the most simplistic problem of like how to tell when to sell, you can basically say, oh, well, again, it's going to follow this token called Phantom. Does that make sense? It'll eventually get into this range. If they want to know why will it eventually get in that range, then they can go learn about active staking. Then they can go learn about metertrage and the deflationary mechanisms. Does that make sense? Right? But first things first is they want to learn why this will happen and why it gives them that benefit. Then when they actually go and they look under the hood, if they're smart enough, they'll be convinced. If they're not smart enough, they'll go find somebody who's smart enough. Does that make sense? Right? Because if we're going to go and make this big, bold claim that we tell when to sell, that's just compelling enough for them to actually do their own research. And that's all we're trying to do. Does that make sense? So we don't, the active staking, the metertrage, the seigniorage, all of those things, instead of us thinking about that being our ice cream, we think of that being our chocolate chips now. Does that make sense? I also foresee fruition a few clicks away. I also foresee it because, again, this is now waiting on me. But again, I might be done with this today, to be clear. Okay, and then you guys know what step 3 is in our marketing. I've been talking about this for a while. YouTube marathon. Okay, so again, I will go on 20 to 40 fucking YouTube interviews. So a lot of people are still in my DMs with commentary about our marketing. Please withhold all judgment about this until the 20th YouTube interview. Like, I don't know why, like, you're even opining right now. Like, why wouldn't you just wait until, like, the marketing is happening? Like, right now, again, 500 views a day. We're just dialing in data. Does that make sense? Like, we don't have the explosive amount of marketing that I'm trying to have probably until all of this is happening, until this is scaling by itself, until this is scaling by itself, and then I'm doing this because I have nothing else to work on. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, our marketing, withhold the effectiveness of our marketing until I've done my 20th YouTube interview. Does that make sense? On interview number 20, if you want to complain to me about something, I will be more than willing to apologize for any shortcoming you think is happening at that point. Does that make sense? But I'm doing these things before the interviews so they continue to work while I'm spending time doing interviews. Does that make sense? These smaller things will compound in the background at an exponent while I'm doing this linear work right here using external fucking external support. Does that make sense to you guys? Alessio, no. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Token. When I have this thing done, and effectively when I have the Twitter ambassador program systemized to the point where I'm not in it. Okay, the problem with a lot of this project is that I become the bottleneck. That is me. Like, so I have to effectively get out of being the bottleneck. Does that make sense? When I can stop being the bottleneck and this happening automatically, then I move on to the next thing. Does that make sense? So when this is now happening without me completely, where I, again, even with the TikTok content right now, I'm always in a conversation every day about it. Like, it's like to the point that like it doesn't make sense for the time, but eventually I'll need to talk about it less. It'll just happen automatically. The Twitter ambassadors, once they actually have the toolkit, and by the way, this goes to everybody who's on Twitter, which is just the website, the ambassador program will now be effective because I could onboard 4 ambassadors this week, but if I don't have the ability to give them a simple tool where they can evangelize and promote the project all on their own, there's no point in having ambassadors because you're increasing the amount of parrots of me, but it doesn't mean that the ambassadors care enough to learn. Does that make sense? Like, you guys who have been with this project for 2 years, like, yeah. No, Fexer, no, I have to finish it today. Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but again, that doesn't really apply to us either way. Like, I mean, like, that would be a higher phantom top or a higher phantom, but most people, I think it's going to happen in like deeper in 2025. Yeah. Yeah, I would say like it's still pretty underwhelming, especially when you correct for inflation. So like, if you correct for inflation, the previous all-time high was 81,000. So we're maybe 20% higher than the previous all-time high right now. Like, I know people think it's way higher than that because they don't realize the dollar's been debased, but I would still say that this is like, I would say you probably have about 6 more months of like clear summer. Right, for sure. But then also knowing when to sell is the whole value prop there too. Yeah, I also, again, I've heard all of these things. I want you to understand this is what we're doing whether we're in summer or winter, to be clear. Yeah, again, I know that people want to ride the maximum of optimism of summer. We're doing this right now, to be clear. Like, this is happening right now. But again, I would rather build a Twitter ambassador program where we're not just leaning on 5 guys, but those 5 guys can all recruit 5 guys, and then we have 30 Twitter ambassadors in like 2 weeks. Does that make sense? If I can make the Twitter ambassador program systemized to the point where I'm not even in it anymore, then therefore that means that our ambassadors can grow and recruit other ambassadors. It's literally like the exponential level of what we were doing before. Does that make sense? Yeah. But again, yeah. Rolf, you included, because I know you also promote on Twitter, like Alessio and like other people. This website, again, is meant to literally maximize your own effectiveness on Twitter. Like legitimately, I think of it like this. I appreciate every tweet that's ever done in praise or support of this product. I appreciate every single one of them. In order to get you guys more bang for your buck, as it were, this toolkit, which is again just a website, which is literally a blog page, is just meant to, one, effectively lead with the most appealing value of PYRESWAP or the GPSC, lead with the most appealing aspect of it, and then funnel them actually into Discord from their own impetus. Meaning like they care to learn about the project more in Discord. In regular marketing, you would capture a lead through email and then take that lead and put it in a lead nurturing system. Our lead nurturing system is Discord. Does that make sense? Do you guys get what I'm saying? So like you're not going to use email marketing in crypto. Does that make sense? You can for certain newsletters, and then we can like build that later or whatever, but that's not going to be effective enough. Rather, we're just trying to get people from their own volition to go learn about a project on Discord. Even this Discord as it is now is not the final state of it. Does that make sense? I will, in parallel with the YouTube Marathon, be overhauling this Discord so it is more user-friendly, it has more tutorial information, has more videos, because again, me and Pyre Producer are aware that we need to make like 5 more tutorial videos. Does that make sense? So all of that more newbie-friendly stuff will be here. Does that make sense? This Discord will be upgraded to facilitate the nurturing of leads, if that makes sense. Again, part of the value of this Discord are the live streams. Part of this value is the fact that the community is so engaged with each other, right? Like again, this is value out of being here. A lot of the stuff of joining this Discord, that's what they get first, and then if they want to, right, does that make sense? Like buying the token becomes secondary. You get what I'm saying? I mean, I know that you guys don't want to think about it, but like that now becomes like the natural course of action, because the Discord community that we've built is already quite impressive, right? We'll make it more impressive. But the fact of the matter is that what is the value of Discord in Web3? It's a lead nurturing system in marketing language. Yes, again, lots of predictions about 2025. All of this stuff I'm talking about here is starting in 2024, right? I would really like to be in YouTube marathons within, I don't know, 2 weeks. Does that make sense? Or even less? Does that make sense? Like I'm literally trying to, yeah. I think I could even get there within a week, depending. I now have another person here. So again, my output is probably going to go up exponentially. But that other person is going to mostly focus on the content engine. So the point being here is that the content engine is literally going to have more support. And like we're going to only scale it into more outlets. Does that make sense? The Twitter Ambassador Program. I was thinking if we have 10 to 20 Twitter ambassadors, this will be good enough. But really, why stop there? Why not get 100 Twitter ambassadors? Why not get 500 Twitter ambassadors? So if I can make this Twitter ambassador system, which by the way, I read an entire book, and this book had an entire chapter just about building affiliate armies. Does that make sense? And literally like the way to systemize an affiliate army. So I can effectively delegate this and literally systemize it for our Twitter guys running it. Does that make sense? And then they can effectively create, like they can basically all qualify who's a Twitter ambassador or not. I make a single like end of the week knighting ceremony. Does that make sense? And then like they just go to work. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Yeah, like legitimately it just requires me, in order for me to step away from the Twitter Ambassador Program, I have to spend a little bit more time giving it toolkits and systems so where it doesn't rely on me. You don't want to bottleneck any system in your business model. That's really the nutshell of it. But yeah, Maddie, the point being is that we're going to market whether it's bull or bear. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, okay, guys, if a nuclear weapon went off like this month, crypto would crash. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Crypto would crash its fucking face off, right? And the idea of a fucking bull run would probably vanish. The fact of the matter is that like as long as the chains continue to validate blocks, we can keep going. Does that make sense? Like my thoughts and prayers out to whoever gets nuked, right? But like legitimately any and all market scenarios. Does that make sense? And I'm not trying to do band-aid marketing where we just market for a launch and then hopefully we fucking make it. I'm trying to make it so that we are always marketing all the time. Just like any top 50 project, they're marketing all the time. Going forward, my goal is to get into a top 50. Does that make sense? As an aggregate, of course, we have 35 fucking tokens. So the point being is that we've been delayed worse. we're going to approach marketing like a real professional. I don't listen to anybody who is talking about meme coins about marketing. I don't listen to anybody in Discord about marketing because none of you guys have gotten to a project to over $1 billion. Does that make sense? No offense, right? So rather, I just read books from 2 guys that have done marketing to the 9 figures. Does that make sense? So if I read books from a few guys that have done marketing for 9 figures, human behavior is the same, right? Risk and risk reversal the same. Why wouldn't I just learn from the guys that have actually done it? I don't look at most of the projects you look at and think they're successful. Does that make sense? Because any meme coin is going to go the way of NFTs in 2027 or whatever. Does that make sense? Or 2025 even. Who fucking knows? I am not trying to copy anything from that playbook. Does that make sense? Because I'm trying to make this last for 10 years, 20 years, to be clear. I'm not trying to diminish anybody's ideas, okay? But like I'm literally aiming higher, which is why it might take longer for you guys to see something, see some sort of sensory feedback, okay? But like legitimately build a system that is happening all the time. So therefore, when I go do YouTube marathons, that's not the only marketing happening that day. Does that make sense? So if I have 4 interviews dropping a day for like 5 days in a row, that's still not the only marketing that happened that day. Does that make sense? It's still not bottlenecking on me. Does that make sense? Because if I'm just doing this, these are still bottlenecking on me. Does that make sense? And by the way, we will fail. If all this stays bottlenecking on me, we will fail, to be clear. So the most important thing is to make things happen that do not bottleneck on me. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, like the type of scale we're trying to go to, yeah, like it requires more than me. Does that make sense? I have to make myself less critical in these processes. The good news is it's working. The good news is it's fucking working. Holy shit. Yeah, the good news is we are actually making progress here. Okay, anyways. So again, any type of like judgment or feedback about our marketing like strategy, you should wait until interview number 20. You really have barely seen anything yet. We are in fact just collecting data in the content engine. We have 1 Twitter ambassador and he's not well equipped. Make sense? Like this Twitter ambassador, you can't talk about PYRESWAP on Twitter. Like to be honest, you have to literally bring them and funnel them to go to a different place to learn about it. Does that make sense? When we were giving away Pyre AVAX in the AVAX Talk giveaway, nobody was coming to this Discord to solve a problem of theirs. Does that make sense? They were coming here to get $10 for free and then dump it and then leave. Does that make sense? So the intention of coming to this Discord also has to change. Do you guys understand? If we're just doing this quick like, hey, do these 7 things and we give you money, they're going to take the money, they're going to do 7 things, they're going to take the money, they're going to fucking leave. Does that make sense? But if they believe that this Discord has a solution to their real problem they have, they will stay, they will investigate, they will learn. Does that make sense? This has to be the context about which they've learned about the project. Everything that I was doing, I appreciate, yes, and Rolf, I 100% agree, which is why again, like we're just doing what it takes to make these things get to the Vibratile range. Whether Phantom is 70 cents, 7 cents, or $7, it's the same process. 7 cents, 70 cents, or $7. Same process. Same process. Yeah. Legitimately, we want to make it so that there's always more people joining this project than leaving. Always. Always. Like as a consistency. Whether Bitcoin is 200 grand or whether Bitcoin crashes to 20. That is always the case happening, maybe on a monthly rate, on a rate. Anyways. More on that later. Damn, this pre-workout sure does fucking kick. Can you guys feel it on your end? Can you guys feel the pre-workout? Yeah, is it emanating from me? Okay, again, 1, 2, 3. Content engine. The content that is most likely to get produced and sporadically get a surge of new eyeballs is all short form. The entire social media marketing meta now is if you're trying to grow any following, the place to do it is on fucking short form. On Twitter, you need somebody who already has a fucking following. Does that make sense? Like legitimately, you go through the grind of getting a following, then those people can become influencers or ambassadors, etc. Does that make sense? Still part of the plan. Does that make sense? But instead of me spending 17 hours with an ambassador for them to only get half of it correct, I will just give them the most simplistic and most appealing tool to use on Twitter in order to get people to come to the Discord of their own volition and their own impetus, not to collect $10 and then fuck off. If you go look at the Go look at the channel right now, the AVAX Talk prize giveaway. You'll see like half of them are now deleted users, which literally means they spun up a Discord account to collect $10 and then they deleted it. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Okay, anyways. Haas, a lot can change from now in December 31st. Yeah, again, the entire 2-ohm, 2-share fucking plot line is 5 weeks long. 5 weeks long. By the way, Forgiving launched 2-ohm like January 3rd, 2022, and 2-share was at 8 grand like February 6th. So the whole plot line is 5 weeks. So like again, things can change night and day, especially when you start scaling things exponentially on what will scale what you guys look at exponentially. Does that make sense? Yeah, 5 weeks long. So like again, everyone's like, oh no, what about Genesis? Like again, you have no idea when one of these things might just pop off immediately. But the fact of the matter is, the best way to make it exponential is if it's not bottlenecking on me. Does that make sense? So again, we're building Fight Club in the house here. We're building Fight Club in the house. Where literally this other person is going to work 60 hours on literally just maximizing the fuck out of content. We were talking this morning about having 15 different content brands, like brands 1 through 15. So legitimately we would have 45 different short form accounts posting every day. Does that make sense? Yeah, like that is not impossible to do. Does that make sense? Legitimately, like the more things we use for systemizing the production of content, which involves templates, AIs that scrape data and then turn it into visuals, data visualization, right? Yes, they can earn on them as well. And you know what we can do with that money? We can buy advertising space on Reddit where we link to howtotellwhentosell.com because a Redditor would click on that fucking ad in a heartbeat. Does that make sense? Yeah, CJ, for sure. But legitimately, CJ, we need more users, not more money. Yeah. Yeah. Like, again, CJ, I'm telling people no to offer me capital. I'm like, listen, no, get me. I literally said, again, instead of 5 users bringing in $1 million, bring me 500 users bringing $10. Does that make sense? We would do better with 500 users bringing in $10 than 5 users bringing in $1 million. Because if you have 5 users bringing in $1 million, we'll all go to PEG, then it'll print, then it'll crash, and then we'll still be in the same exact spot right now. Does that make sense? Yeah, no, we need more users all the time. Like I'm not buying the token anymore. Does that make sense? Actually, I might buy the token. I might buy the token maybe on the day 1 of YouTube marathon. We'll see. Okay, yeah, I might make my last buy on the day 1 of YouTube. But anyways, yeah, but no, legitimately, it's about the user base. It's about the user base. Don't worry, I won't buy all of it. Okay, guys, I won't buy all of it. Right? No, CJ. Yeah, again, we're not doing buybacks and burns. That's the whole point of terminal utility. Like, legitimately, nobody should have to act in a way that is philanthropic or altruistic. Again, everybody's like marmoset nature can in fact be the driving force of this. That is literally like the fucking value prop on an economics level. You don't need to be a philanthropist. Bankers are not philanthropists. Make sense? Yeah. But the point being is that like buying the token is not solving the problem. Like I talked about this since June 17th. So again, 5 months in a row now, I'm like, this number. If you solve the user base problem, you solve the TVL problem, you solve the volume problem, you solve the TWAP problem, you solve fucking whatever the fuck else your problem, the retweet problem, the Twitter problem. Just grow the user base and all the other problems get solved in the derivative. Does that make sense? You get what I'm saying? It's like, imagine if you had to put out a campfire, and I'm like, well, we could just cause a tsunami and put out all the campfires. So we're just gonna have a tsunami and put out all these little fires. I'm not gonna chase them down and play whack-a-mole. We will fail that way. We will fail. Does that make sense? Just being honest. I'm not whack-a-moling with fucking temporary solutions. That is not the caliber of this project. I know that most of the projects you guys invest in, they handle things that way. That's fucking amateur hour. This violent marketing effort started in fucking July, Rolf. Yeah. This violent marketing effort started probably, maybe beginning of August. Yeah. But legitimately, it involved correction and correction and correction and correction. Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Anyways. So, no more violence? No, I mean, Rolf, I only plan on scaling the violence. So again, whatever the amount of violence we have today, I'm trying to say that tomorrow we'll have more, like going forward. Does that make sense? The same way that a conglomerate corporation still does advertising when they're at like a, Coca-Cola advertises all over the place, even though they're at like 100 billion market cap. Like, that's what I mean. But yes, exactly that. Yes. So legitimately, I'm saying we're always marketing, and I want to get to the point where we're competing for market share, not just trying to like get out of our launch phase. Does that make sense? Like, I'm trying to say that this is the beta phase, right? Everybody knows that. But I want to build the marketing now that's not beta marketing. Like, I want to build the phase 5 marketing now. Does that make sense? So when we get to phase 5, we don't got to do anything different. I don't got to think about marketing. Marketing is just happening every single day. Does that make sense? Or at least every week. Make sense to you guys? The same way that Chainlink does, right? Or the same way that Coinbase does. Does that make sense? Like, that's what I'm trying to get at. I agree with this, Rolf. I agree with that. Yes, legitimately having a, I'm ex-military, so I think of it like a deployment. Like, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not doing recreational stuff. I turn down recreational stuff. I legitimately, for a long time in the development of this, I was sleeping on the floor, legitimately just to give myself more discomfort and thinking of it like a deployment. So yes, I am in the same mindset. Yeah, just to be clear, like I do understand what you're saying there. So it's literally like, whether you're a pacifist or not, you can understand the idea of like going on this journey into the wilderness. So I do simulate that here just to make, let's put it this way. A mentor once told me the altar of greatness demands sacrifice. So an author I read is Jose Maria Escriva. And Escriva talks about something called mortification of the flesh. And what it means is that in order to discipline yourself, you have to give up certain sensory delights, so certain sensual pleasure. So whether it's like giving up a food that's sweet or like giving up a hobby that is kind of like degenerate. Does that make sense? You have to always kind of give up things that arguably are something that the child in you would like, but you need to go without right now. So this is something that sanctifies you. He's a religious figure, so he gets religious with it. But anyways, okay. Content engine has started. Twitter ambassadors is waiting on me, but this could be done by the end of the week. To be clear, the Twitter ambassador program could in fact be no longer waiting on me for shit by the end of the week. Does that make sense? CJ, yes, and by the way, in America, we had a holiday on Thursday called Thanksgiving, and I did leave the house. Okay, so I did in fact leave the house. Yep, it did happen. Yeah, and again, then Thanksgiving ended and I got back to work. Like, actually, you guys know what I did? I woke up early on Thanksgiving to do work. Yeah, I worked for like 6 hours on Thanksgiving, and then like I kind of like worked less on Friday than I normally work. Yeah, actually, I canceled a Friday meeting because I was like, honestly, there was nothing much to fucking announce or talk about. But anyways, okay. 1, 2, and 3. It's this easy. Beyond 3, there's still other things that can happen, like getting a Reddit ad, getting in newsletters. Oh, by the way, my new house guest knows a bunch of. He is in communication with Twitch streamers that do finance channels. Does that make sense? So on top of having Twitter ambassadors, we could also have Twitch ambassadors. Does that make sense to you guys? We could in fact sponsor. It is not Conor McGregor. No. It is I think one of them is called Dr. Degen or Dr. Degenerate or something like that. I don't know. Legitimately, they're like streamers that mostly the guys that trade meme stocks and stuff like that. And yeah, exactly, CJ. Yeah. So that is also something that can happen later on this list. Make sense? But like perpetually. So if we're gonna have Twitch streamers, we're always gonna have Twitch streamers. Does that make sense? But it'll involve us knowing the numbers behind these promotions. And also, our Twitch streamers also have to be set up to succeed, because otherwise we lose the ability to fucking incentivize them. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. All right. Damn, did I just talk for like, 45 minutes here? Okay, let's actually talk about, you guys want to talk about markets and macro now? Yeah, exciting stuff. Okay. But yes, we can also, XRP is at $2. Even Pirate Producer was asking, like, why the fuck would that happen? I have no idea. Yeah, like, again, I would assume that, for those of you who don't know, XRP sells all their tokens, like, over the counter. Does that make sense? I wish them luck. Do you think that's what it was, CJ? Like, XRP overtook Solana because they installed Pump.fun? Okay, I doubt it. Yeah, like, I bet, like, that might have been something that just happened in coordination with them they probably fakely pumped their own chart. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I wish them a lot of success or whatever. Yeah. But again, CJ, you have to think about this. XRP, they brand themselves. It's not fading, Alessio. Like, legitimately, okay, first of all, enter the conversation taking place in people's minds. We stopped mentioning tomb forks in our marketing. Legitimately, we have to make fucking we have to make this project succeed and legitimately let that cup fill the other cups. Does that make sense? It's not like not being used. It still gets Trigger Happy has access to it and he retweets it. Does that make sense? But the fact of the matter is, Alessio, that right there involves taking labor, doing the small. What is the audience on our what's the audience? What's the total follower count on that page, by the way? What is the total follower count on that account, on that Twitter account? It's like, yeah, okay, Alessio, legitimately, we need to get new eyeballs. Yeah. What is the point? Rolf, and we will, but the fact of the matter is that we need to prove that first on the fucking charts before, doing that. Does that make sense? But again, those 150 followers already know about this project. Oh my God, Alessio, that will not work. We need to market broader than current Phantom. Does that make sense? Like, again, I'm not gonna jump in a puddle. I'm just gonna jump in the fucking pool. No, Alessio, no, I'm just gonna jump in the pool. That is a waste of time though, Alessio, which is what everybody cares about at this point. Does that make sense? Hey, we now have the fucking, we now have the 2 ohm, 3 ohm, Z ohm. Trigger does have access to this. So legitimately, he can go now. He retweets the PYRESWAP account from it. But Alessio, somebody now needs to make the fucking content for it. Does that make sense? Legitimately. And then on top of that, we're probably not going to start using that account again until we do the aesthetic overhaul of the tomb forks. Does that make sense? Yeah, Alessio, it's not here and there. If it's not happening every day, we're not doing it at all. Does that make sense? So if you're not committed to it at a consistency, we're not doing it at all. It has to be marketing happens every day or don't fucking bother. Does that make sense? Because when I was running the Twitter for PYRESWAP or all of them by myself, it didn't make sense. Nothing was happening. I needed to have somebody else doing it. Does that make sense? So legitimately, we're not at that point where we can even afford this investment. Does that make sense? Yeah, it doesn't make I want you to know, Whisper, right now, Whisper tweets on the Turkish account, and the Turkish account has 100 followers or less. Does that make sense? Alessio, even more reason for me to focus more on making Twitter ambassadors how we win at Twitter, and not just using a 200 follower account that everyone already knows about PYRESWAP on. Because the pinned tweet on those accounts is a PYRESWAP retweet. Make sense? Okay, again, legitimately, this is a divided focus where everybody knows about the project already. We need new Twitter eyeballs, not old Twitter eyeballs. I am not trying to market to Phantom. I'm trying to market to all of crypto. If we market just the Phantom, Phantom will die. We have to be bringing more people into Phantom than Phantom is fucking vamping for Sonic. Alessio, yeah, we cannot market to Phantom. We have to be growing Phantom because Sonic is vamping Phantom. Yeah, do not market to Phantom. People need to learn about PYRESWAP and then arrive at Phantom. Does that make sense? We're trying to be the #1 project on Phantom as a chain that still lives. If we're marketing to Phantom, it'll just fucking go away. Yes, Rolf, but in order to do that, we have to be able to get user base not on Phantom. We have to be able to bring money, capital, and users, all the above, to Phantom from outside of Phantom. So again, bigger net. Does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mac. I appreciate that bullish sentiment. Yeah. So again, getting people on Phantom. First of all, getting people on Phantom. Alessio, you're already doing a great job of that with your own personal account. Yeah, you're already doing a great job at that. Bravo. I'm going to make it even easier for you to do that with a broader net. I applaud you. And Rolf, both of you guys. Both of you guys are doing great for us on Twitter. You guys, as literally just individuals, are going to be more convincing than just a 150 person coming out of the thing to literally beat the same drum. Here's some things that I want you to understand. Yeah, Alessio, this is true, but okay, I want you to think of this sequence first. Let's get Pyre Phantom up to the point where 2 ohm meter-charges again. And since Pyre Phantom will be big enough, 2 ohm will meter-charge itself up much more quickly. Does that make sense? And when 2 ohm starts moving again more quickly, this will effectively allow this to be the catalyst that makes people change their mind. Because generally speaking, and I'll tell you this about, can I get screen share again, Mr. Producer? Always enter the conversation already taking place in the customer's mind. On Phantom, on any chain where they know about tomb forks, anywhere where they know about tomb forks, the conversation in their mind is that tomb forks are fucking scams. Does that make sense? And thank you, Flacku. I know you're waiting to hear back from me. I am trying to literally this week get our Twitter ambassador program fucking humming. Let's put it that way. Flying, we'll put it that way. And I appreciate that. I know that you're waiting as well. So the point being is, Alessio, the answer is yes. We will eventually have all of the Twitters pumping out content all the time. You guys will actually love the fact of the matter is in 2023, we have this project called the Propaganda Poster Project. And you guys will love that shit later. Like, I promise you, for those of you who remember the propaganda posters, we are going to bring that back legitimately once we have enough of a user base. Alessio, well, I encourage you to convince them as an individual first. Like, I'm just being honest. I encourage you to convince them as an... And Alessio, I'm going to give you a tool to help convince people of that first. Because they know... Okay, in order for them to change the way they view a tomb fork like 2 ohm, they probably still need to learn about PYRESWAP. Does that make sense? Because if you're just telling them, oh no, don't worry, it'll work. These people, it's like... Okay, it's like they've already had their heart broken by a stripper 30 times in a row. Does that make sense? And you're going to tell them, don't worry, on your 31st time to the strip club, you're going to meet your soulmate. Does that make sense? That is how I would allegorically describe the argument where you want to get into people's heads like, bro, just come to the strip club with me. Don't worry, you'll find your soulmate. Does that make sense? Alessio, yes. Yes. And by the way, Alessio, okay. I agree with that. I agree with that. Rolf, I am all about having the YouTube marathon start before January. Does that make sense? Within 2 weeks, arguably, okay? Realistically, too. Realistically. Okay, so, cause you guys know how I get fucking timelines wrong, but we've been working this for a while. This is true electronic, and, yeah, by all means. And I'll fucking, I will go on some psycho shit to make that happen, by the way, because I'm definitely not going to go to sleep until I get certain things done today. SSP, but yes, thank you, Electronic. I want to use an acronym that is not solid state drive. Thank you for your bullishness again, and I appreciate it a lot. You know what? I appreciate SED as well. Okay, I'm going to actually talk about this thing, training for tomorrow, because we're already almost at like the hour. But yes, Rolf, exponentially, multiple things happening in the day. So before the end of the month, we will have content happening on multiple brand accounts, meaning we will have, who knows, we might have 10 posts a day in short form happening. Then we will also have way more Twitter ambassadors than we have now. Twitter ambassadors that instead of just parroting me, they literally have the equipment needed to do what we want them to do, which is really funnel people to Discord. Does that make sense? And funnel them to Discord of their own volition for the purpose of learning. Does that make sense? Like, legitimately, they're motivated by curiosity, not motivated by quickly getting Pyre AVAX and then selling it. Does that make sense to you guys? Different motivation is going to determine the different outcome. Make sense? So then having all that happen in a same day, along with me doing a fucking streak of YouTube marathons. By the way, we have between 800 and 900 crypto YouTuber emails. Does that make sense? So like, it's going to be more than 20 to 40 interviews, but I'm going to just do them in batches of 20 for the sake of getting KPI. Fucking, you guys know what I'm saying, right? Literally, I'm going to do them in batches of 20 so that way we can look at 20 at a time and look at data from them. Does that make sense to you guys? Because I'm trying to do a data approached method to marketing. Literally, Rolf, having all these emails compiled ahead of time, instead of before in July and August, it was like I was like a beggar and I was going from one YouTuber to another YouTuber. Does that make sense? Like, hey, are you gonna cover my project? The guys that already covered us were the ones that knew about the project ahead of time, right? Like the ones that I had relationships with. Anybody that becomes a stranger to me, if I'm going through like a vagrant, I'm in their system. Does that make sense? So legitimately, they have a funnel and I'm in their funnel. In order to make us have the advantage on YouTube, we need to have a system. Does that make sense? So let's put it this way. I can send an email to not just one guy at a time. I can send it to fucking 50 guys at a time. Does that make sense? So then when they all respond, I can literally pick the better half of the ones that I like in their response. Does that make sense? And literally just target those guys. So this allows me to put negotiation on my side, and then I can also pick the smarter half. Does that make sense? Because from their responses, I'll be able to gauge whether or not they'll do a good job even covering us. Does that make sense? Like, you guys know what I mean by that, right? Like, in the email response, I'll be able to figure out, it's like, okay, this guy's a meme coin guy. He sounds like he's drunk at 11 o'clock in the morning. Let's assume that it's not going to be a fit. Or if they have a funnel that is too strict for us. Does that make sense? But the idea here is that we're going to start with guys who have subs under 10,000. Does that make sense? We're going to start by getting a whole bunch of small YouTube videos because, one, it allows us to show more people more interviews of me. Does that make sense? So we end up in more places. Two, all of the people on our list, they're all Twitters too. They all have Twitters. So we have 800 to 900 Twitters. So on top of these YouTube interviewers, a lot of them could also become Twitter ambassadors as well in the same conversation. Make sense? So legitimately in that, once we have like our own scaling ambassador program, that can be now scaled with, okay, now I'm going to go on YouTube Marathon with people who also have this. Rolf, I believe he might have a conflict of interest, and it's just, yeah, it is that was a bit of a fucking long shot anyway. I was not staying up all night with my fingers crossed for that. Who is it then? I don't want to say. I still don't want to say, if that makes sense, if that would cancel it. Yeah. How about this? Rolf, I will tell you in DM, okay? There you go. I'll tell you in DM as long as you promise not to fucking go around saying it, okay? Yep, I'll tell you in DM. Yep. Anyways, we're now at about an hour, and I didn't even talk about macro. There was some cool stuff here on screen share. This was a report I wanted to talk about. Could I get screen share, Mr. Producer? We'll probably still save this for tomorrow. JP Morgan did a study on the dynamics and demographics of U.S. household crypto asset use, and they actually have some interesting stuff about it. So they actually showed here that most crypto users made their first transactions during spikes. Not crazy. And legitimately, they show you here that new crypto users often show up in the spikes as well. Now here are these problems, right? Because you have people showing up now. Anyways, this is something cool. I'll do it tomorrow because we already did an hour, and I still want to go and move the needle on the actual Twitter ambassador program right now today. So I want to thank you guys for coming to the PYRESWAP show, and we did talk about the project. And I guess that's what that was important. We can also just tuck in more financial news tomorrow. I still have my notes in front of me. The leaderboard. You guys remember the leaderboard? Like, that's still in the pipeline, but I have to focus on getting marketing automations handled first. Does that make sense? So I owe this to the devs, the back end design of the leaderboards, right? Like the logic it uses to record scores. But that's something that is beneficial to you guys already in the project. It'll be a lot easier to do that and focus on that when I have those things happening in the background, and I don't have to think about every day where we had 0 posts or 0 content or like 0 ambassadors. Those were all just like strikeouts. Does that make sense? We needed to effectively have positive numbers on the board. Otherwise, we can't snowball anything. Make sense? That pre-workout, man, I tell you. Okay. Yeah, let's just end it now. Thank you guys for coming to the PYRESWAP show. We'll do more tomorrow on Market Monday and stuff. And yeah, don't worry. We're all going to make it. This project can't die. Make sense? It literally cannot die. All we're doing now is making it more able to survive by making me less of a bottleneck. Does that make sense? Like, I really am doing this. It was a serious amount of delays and trial and error in the last like 3 or 4 months with marketing and advertising. And what it took was for me to literally sit down and learn marketing and advertising better than the average jackass in crypto. Does that make sense? Because if I know the fundamentals of marketing and advertising better than them, I'm going to beat them in any marketing condition. Does that make sense? what works for meme coins will not work for us, right? So we have to really get creative and think about everything that it takes to compel people to take the next action. And that is where my workload now comes from. The leaderboards are still coming, but again, that is more about demonstrating the idea of a credit union and credit scores, which I still feel like you guys are owed that proof and at least that conceptual basis, but it does not solve the more immediate problem, which we've had since June 17th of we don't have enough users. Does that make sense? Because, by the way, for those of you who don't know, and by the way, Trigger Happy right there. Trigger Happy, do you have access to all the Twitters? Correct? You have like all the Toonfork Twitters, right? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. We'll wonder why, but the point being is that if you guys want to give Trigger content to post, Trigger can schedule that ahead of time. Does that make sense? If you want the 2-ohm, 3-ohm, Z-ohm platform, it's only got 200 followers anyway, right? Why the fuck not? We'll see it. By the way, I want you guys to know something. Kia Dezo, are you here, Kia Dezo? Is Kia Dezo on the PYRESWAP show? Is Kia Dezo in the house? Okay. Anyways, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Kia Dezo might be building something that can produce content for Twitter things automatically. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Goodbye.